Hello, and welcome to the Original Remake Podcast, a show where we take the role of Hollywood executives, shamelessly exploiting your nostalgia for money. My name is Pat, and I'm joined by Amy,
Hello.
Andrea,
Hello.
and Nick.
Oh, hi.
And today we are discussing the 1983 movie Trading Places.
So I am quite annoyed at myself that I picked this film.
Why is that?
Because it's so good and it really shouldn't be remade. So, and that's the podcast. Roll credits.
Podcast not over because I was surprised when you picked the movie because I haven't seen this film in many years, so it's kind of just relegated to this is a classic status for me. And rewatching the film, I was actually surprised for me. I'm like, yeah, actually, this is a film that if you take it from the 80s to today and update what class warfare means for 2022 and the state of the financial markets, including new things like crypto and like subreddits that are overturning financial markets and things like that. There's a lot that I think this film can add to its story, and so I was pleasantly surprised. Actually, I went in thinking the same as you, that actually I don't know why you picked this, but I definitely see a way that this film could be remade and still not kind of ruin the classic nature of the original.
I see where it could be remade and it would not ruin the classicness of the original, but I still feel like that any remake would never be as good as the original. And I think any remake would have to be, I think Amy made this suggestion when we were talking about Super Mario Brothers, that she would like remake it, but her movie would be like a sequel or a prequel. I think that if I were to remake this, it would be the same sort of thing. It would be more like a sequel or like a distant relative.
I don't know if that was actually in the making, but I did read up that when they remade Coming to America 2, which, I saw it because I liked the first one, but it didn't turn out right. They were also thinking about upgrading all the actors from the original into Trading Places 2.
I think that if they were to do that, they'd have one hell of a job.
Yeah.
That they'd have to work on, because I struggled to recast this movie.
I was about to
I
say,
enjoyed
isn't that
watching
our
it
job?
though.
Yeah.
Yes, it was good to revisit that.
It was. I forgot. So I should probably explain what this movie's about if there are people listening that don't know what this movie is. So Trading Places is a Christmas movie. It starts just before Thanksgiving, and like the climax and the ending scene takes place, I believe it's New Year's Day or the day after New Year's Day.
It's shortly after New Year's.
Yeah. And the day that they find out that they've been their lives have been messed with is Christmas. So the movie's about two brothers who own a brokerage firm. They're extremely wealthy, and they decide that they're going to have a bet on nature versus nurture. One of the brothers thinks, Randolph Duke, thinks that it is a person's environment that makes them who they are. The other one thinks that it is completely based on your genetics and who you are and where you're, like, what your heritage is that makes you who you are. And they decide to prove this by taking one of their employees, who is a quote unquote well-mannered, very wealthy, very proper, he runs their business. I can't remember exactly what his job title is. And they basically humiliate him, ruin him, and take a homeless guy off the street and put him into the former guy's place. Hilarity ensues. I really wanted to do a Christmas movie. I just remember that scene where Lewis Winthorpe is like sitting on the subway or the bus, and he just pulls this giant piece of salmon out of his disgustingly gray and grimy Santa beard, and he just starts to eat it on the bus. And like, that's
hilarious.
Yeah, like that's what I remember. And I'm just like, this movie is a Christmas movie. Let's do that.
And the actors are just amazing on it. I mean,
they are.
Who played? Oh yeah, Dan Aykroyd. He actually
Aykroyd,
just
yeah.
Aykroyd. Yeah, he thought of that. Like all the Eddie Murphy, a lot of it was ad-libbing. Like these actors are just great comedians.
They're perfect. They're perfect for both their roles in both. This is going to sound funny. They're perfect for both their roles in both their roles, if that makes sense. You know, Eddie Murphy plays, you know, wisecracking kind of hustler, street hustler, fantastic. And then when he's put into kind of the business situation,
he plays great hustler.
He plays a great rich hustler too. And Dan Aykroyd plays a great kind of aloof rich person who doesn't actually know how the world works, and he also plays a great rich person who's just found out how the real world works.
Yes. Yes, they're both really good, and it was hard to come up with people that I felt could do something, could behave similarly, and could go from one extreme to the other. So for example, you know, go from being prim and proper and wealthy and acting, you know, all squeaky clean, to complete dirt poor and homeless and, you know, planting drugs in someone's desk drawer.
Poorly.
Yes, poorly.
Being exceptionally bad at crime.
Yes. And I think I wanted to remake it because we were talking about it many weeks ago, and it was just like, oh, for Trading Places we could do this and we could do this, and I forgot all of that. And now through our conversations I'm realizing that we can have a bigger conversation about like the haves and the have-nots and class warfare, and how there's a lot of shady financial stuff that happens and that has happened. And while the main, I guess, crappy, shady thing that happened in the film was where the Duke brothers hired this con man security dude. His name's Beeks. They hire him to...
He's like a fixer, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
He's a fixer. Yeah. Yep. They hire him to steal the crop report so that they can...
He actually had the crop report.
He had the crop report.
Well, he
had a copy of the crop report.
He was the person that was actually set to deliver it per the television interview that they did a quick little bit of exposition on.
Ah, okay. So I forgot about that.
They leave that part out, right? Like the fact that the government's dirty too. Like it's like you kind of skip over that part.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was going with it. It's not that they found this crazy, shady character to do these shady things. They just hired the same guy the government does.
Well, I mean, it's not that they have a shady person. It's they have someone who's their fixer. And I'm going to use that phrase, Pat. Thank you. They have someone who's their fixer. And, you know, he found a way to get the crop report before it was supposed to be released, thus telling them how the orange crop is doing, and thus allowing them to corner or not corner the market on orange juice. Frozen concentrate orange juice.
So one of the things I love about this film is, obviously this is a comedy. We're going to talk a lot about like what it means for class warfare and things like that. But this film, some of its comedy is so on the nose, quietly on the nose. Even the idea of like, they, instead of coming up with like gold, they're just like, no, orange juice.
Yep.
I love that scene too, because they go gold, silver,
pork belly.
Yeah.
And of course, orange juice.
Orange juice concentrated orange juice.
But even the you know, they pan across to the sign of the private club there, and it says liberty and justice for all, and then underneath it just says members only. And I'm just, you know, that is perfect perfectly dry satire that tells you everything you need to know about the movie. But even that, there's slapstick moments in this film as well. You mentioned, one of the big kind of comedic elements is pretty much everything that Dan Aykroyd does in the Santa outfit.
Yes.
And my favorite part that made me laugh out loud was,
that's my favorite part.
My favorite part was he tries to kill himself with the gun.
Oh yeah.
And then he throws the gun away, and it fires off after it hits the ground. It's
great. Yeah.
I love the idea that like he literally can't even kill himself. That's how bad his life is.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a hilarious film, and it's a perfect time for a film like this. If you look at the films that have come out recently, Promising Young Woman is not necessarily about the rich people, but it is about kind of a society of privilege and how systems kind of work against justice for the individual and things like that. That was a fantastic film if you haven't seen that. But films that I haven't seen yet that are coming out around the time we're filming this, there's The Menu, there's Triangle of Sadness as well. And these are all films that just take aim at kind of the uber rich. So this is a perfect time for a film like this. And I don't think it's going to end soon. There's always going to be that kind of divide between the rich and the poor. But I think we live in an era where that divide is increasing in a way that it's hard to ignore now. So this is a perfect time for the film, I think.
I think so too. This movie is also like I was reading up on the movie, and the Roger Ebert called it a screwball comedy, and I heard a lot of different reviews and write-ups about Trading Places being called a screwball comedy, and I was like, what does that even mean? And it is something that used to be popular in like the 30s. This is the definition. They were characterized by social satire, comedic relief through zany, fast-paced, and unusual events, sight gags, sarcasm, screwy plot twists, or identity reversals, and precisely timed, fast-paced verbal dueling and witty, sarcastic dialogue, blending the wacky with the sophisticated.
Yeah, like Charlie Chaplin films, like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It places its emphasis. I read something, and I'm just kind of going over the definition again here. A screwball comedy kind of tends to be lumped with like romantic comedies, but the difference is that the screwball variety places its emphasis on funny, while a romantic comedy places its emphasis on love. And I think you can definitely see that because, like, if it was placing emphasis on love, we'd hear more about like Ophelia and Penelope or what have you.
She definitely doesn't have a lot to do in this film. She essentially is nice to Dan Aykroyd and then gives him a bag of money afterwards.
Yeah, but it's very clear that she's just like, I would love to hear more about Ophelia because she's really intelligent. She's like, and she's got great street smarts, and is also, I don't want to say book smart, but like she's, highly intelligent. She's like, I have this body, this face, and this brain, or what's in here. And she taps to her head. And like, I think that's kind of what causes Winthorpe to be like, oh,
in a way, she is another person. She's like Eddie Murphy, where she could be another example of, you can take someone who's got, who's got a rough upbringing or has gone wrong. She's a prostitute in the film, but she's smart enough where, like, if you gave her the training, she could do the same type of job that Eddie Murphy does, or Dan Aykroyd, that type of thing. So
it really puts the kibosh on needing a college degree to do anything, which makes me very happy inside, because
my parents are very happy that they have that piece of paper hanging up on their wall. So
yeah, well, my piece of paper that cost me, $80,000 or however the hell much it is sitting in a box underneath my bed and looks like I could have printed it with my Black Friday inkjet printer.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to get my master's degree. I think I'm just going to print one off.
Yep.
There you go. Excellent. Beat the system.
Listen, if Eddie Murphy can do it, I can do it. Okay. Okay, so that's kind of chat about kind of some of the origins of the film. Amy, you kind of did some research on what the film was kind of based on, and I didn't know this before. I hadn't known this before, even when we were doing our rewatch. I didn't know this, but this is based off of a kind of classic novel.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, classic stories, switching roles, Mark Twain, the Prince and the Pauper. Two boys look basically exactly the same, and they switch places because they want to see how the other one lives, and then the prince ends up getting into some bad trouble being the beggar. And so this is kind of one of those classic stories in general with class change. It's so popular, I think, throughout the ages, because I don't think we will ever get rid of different class systems. So a lot of people will at least be interested in storylines like this.
Yeah, and it's The Prince and the Pauper is one of those kind of classic stories that's always kind of retold. There's a bunch of like modern tales of like people switching places, whether they look alike or not. But I never thought about this film being kind of a modern, or at least when it was released, a modern take on that. And I thought that was super interesting, that it's like, yeah, even though obviously Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd don't look alike, the fact that this is kind of a story that's been told
in a different
times.
Aspect. It wasn't exactly told, and I like that the people that made this movie put their own spin on it, and it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there has been, I think maybe we can jump into some criticisms of the film in kind of the modern era. There's, I think in a modern day film, you'd want Ophelia to have more screen time, more of a story. There's, I would say, I think Andrea, you said it correct. It's gratuitous nudity.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be a prude or anything, but it's nudity for nudity's sake. Like it doesn't advance anything. The only place that I would keep it is toward the end, where Winthrop comes back to Ophelia's apartment and he's like really sick, and she gets into bed with him, and it just looks like they're spooning. Nothing is really, like, it's implied that something happened, but like that's the only time where I think it's warranted. Every time else is just kind of like, well, it's the 80s. Let's put some boobs in here.
I was just about to say, don't forget, in the 80s, there were movies that came out that had to make an emphasis on women and just exposing themselves. I feel like it was done in the classiest way it could in this movie. I honestly don't think it was insulting, and I'm a woman.
Oh, I don't think it was insulting. I just think like,
wasn't needed, but I also don't think I felt offended.
No, I wasn't offended. It was just like, well, this doesn't need to be here kind of thing. And I think if that were to be in the movie theater now, like, it wouldn't fly. Like, it would have to be cut.
Probably not. Yeah.
Like, we could, the film could get away with the F-bombs and the N-words. And that would probably earn it a rated R just in that in itself. But I think that in order to get past the censors, it would have to be cut out.
It wasn't until we saw all of that I had realized that I'd only seen this movie on TV.
Yeah.
Oh, because you didn't see the breasts.
Like, I'd seen the movies so many times.
Yep.
But I must have always caught it on an as seen.
They do take the really good parts, don't they?
Yeah, like at the end where Mortimer is screaming to turn the machines back on, and his brother is literally having a heart attack. They're like, "Oh, your brother," and he says, "Fuck him!" But in every single if you watch it on cable TV, he says, "Forget him," instead of the F-bomb, and it's just really bad dubbing.
And honestly, this was probably the first time I've seen this movie when I was old enough to get all the jokes.
Really?
And understand. I haven't seen this in a very long time. And I'm a very sheltered young child, so I probably just was like, Eddie Murphy, I love his laugh.
Well, I think the last time I saw it, I was maybe in college or college age. And it's different, right? Because when I first saw it, I didn't own a home. I mean, I had car payments, I had bills, but there's something different about being like, an adult where like, hey, I have to pay my mortgage this month and also next month. And guess what? The next month after that, also have to pay my mortgage. If I stop making money, guess what happens? I still have to pay my mortgage. So there's something different about watching that as kind of adult, and none of us have kids, but like if you have kids, there's something different about watching it as you get older and you're kind of more world weary or pragmatic, I guess. As an adult, your idealism's kind of gone, or at least it is for me. Once I got past like 25, I was like, oh. But
Adulting sucks.
yeah. So then and the comedy becomes a little more sharp, a little more biting at that point as well. You know what I mean?
Like, I mean, I know that there's, maybe I'm sharing a bit too much here, but like, there is that time where you feel like in your life that everything is just coming down on your head, and it is literally a rainy day, and everything's going wrong and you have no control over anything. And that's kind of where Winthorpe is at the end. He's just like, it's literally like, I have clouds over my head, it is raining, I can't even kill myself properly. I feel like many of us have had that situation where maybe not, I can't even kill myself properly, but it's more like nothing is going right. My entire life feels like a train wreck right now.
Hit the reset button on today.
Yes.
I believe that's just every Monday.
There is this weird thing in society, and I don't want to put us off track too much, but since COVID started, it's not a political thing. It's just the planet seems to lurch from crisis to crisis, even though the world's been terrible the whole time. And statistics show that there's a book by Michael Shermer called Angels of Our Better Nature. And it's basically, the book is about actually humanity's the best it's ever been, and it will probably continue to get better, even though post-COVID there's been upticks in crime. If you look at the crime rates, I mean, that little uptick that over the last couple years, it's nothing. Like, go back to like the 70s and 80s and look at the crime statistics. It's insane. We're so much better. So you have to remember sometimes that the world is not as terrible as it could be, and there's many things that we're lucky for. But I do feel like a lot of people right now feel like their life and the world is lurching from like crisis to crisis. And that's where Eddie Murphy's character is, right? He's just hustling along, but he has no direction, no prospects. He has been, as the movie tells us, in and out of the justice system and the prison system, and is probably on a path back there at some point. For the flip side, you've got Dan Aykroyd being oblivious to what life is like for a lot of these people, and then having them switch. Again, it just feels perfect for the last like 2 or 3 years, where you've had COVID, you've had like, seems like there's a war starting every day, or a mass shooting, or a political crisis of some kind in some country that we hear about because the news is everywhere 24/7 and you can't turn it off.
Yep. And that has been Pat's political rant for this episode.
Correct. All I'm saying is, don't turn off the news. Go get yourself a back massage. Everything's gonna be okay.
Yep.
But the world is ending.
I feel like that the film also does a really interesting job of explaining like the levels of wealth. Like it shows like the homeless people, and then your everyday people just chatting on the street and playing basketball and doing normal people things. And then you've got Winthorpe, who's like getting ready for the day, and he gets driven to work in his Mercedes. And then it shows the Dukes, who what the main thing that stands out to me is that they're driven to work in their Rolls Royce, so it's like, it shows
there's rich and then there's really rich.
There's rich and then there's like, I don't have to worry about anything rich.
Right. There's rich, and then there's your other employee who's rich, comes to you, you sign some papers, and that's it, right? Like, that's your job done.
Like, they leave the house in the morning and their entire staff is like, hello, good morning. And Winthorpe is just like, I'm gonna close my door and go to work.
Yeah, all the maids like bow to them on the way out the door, right? Like,
yeah,
there's something to be said actually, so far as like film culture. Most of that is actually done as part of the credits, and there's kind of a lost art where like the credits used to be, the
at the beginning,
and it used to be a part of the film, and that's really never done anymore. Even if there's like a pre-credit sequence, like in Black Panther, the Wakanda Forever, they deal with T'Challa's passing as kind of the pre-credits sequence, and then they go to the kind of Marvel logo from there. There's no like, actors' names or things like that. That is just part of the film proper, right?
Yeah, and that is kind of not in the movies anymore. I wonder why they changed that.
Attention spans have gotten shorter.
Yeah, and I think it used to be used to legally, I think there was part of like some like union law that I think you had to put the credits first, but I don't know whether that's true. I could be wrong, but I feel like I've heard that where they kind of changed it over time, because almost every movie used to have sometimes just an absolute boring 5-minute credit sequence of just people's names popping up.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But some of them were really good, like this movie, where it explains what you're getting into, the basis of the movie itself.
Yeah, it's a key to understanding the movie is introducing those characters in the way you do.
Yes. Then you use that time where you're not actually having dialogue to tell the story in a visual way, which a lot of films don't really do well anymore. The most recent a good example I can think of is like the movie WALL-E, where in like the opening sequence nobody says anything, like not a word. It's all just telling the story, and that you get everything that happened prior to this point in like 5 minutes or less without dialogue. And this movie, Trading Places, does a good job of that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It shows you the information you need without having to like explain it to you, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of jump on then to casting. I think we kind of touched on this earlier, that all of us had some difficulty with recasting this film and trying to get folks who we felt had the Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd kind of soul to them in a way, right? There's something undetachable about these characters and the actors, if that makes sense.
It's so hard though.
And so it was really hard to recast and put someone in our mind's eye in that role. That said, I think Amy and I nailed it with our 2 picks, and I'm very proud of us. We figured it out like an hour before the podcast, but
I after hearing Nick's pick, I think I'm gonna waffle a little bit.
Oh no, you're committed.
Okay, well, Pat, it's your pick for Billy Ray, so you just go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, I picked Donald Glover from Community in Atlanta. He's also an R&B artist. His musician
Childish
name,
Gambino.
Childish Gambino. He's fantastic. I think he's been in a lot of roles where he can play absolute slapstick comedy. I mean, he can really commit himself to a bit and not feel like he's being disingenuous. But he also, I haven't seen all of Atlanta, but he's great at taking on serious roles as well. He had a small role in a Spider-Man movie. He had a small role in The Martian, and so he can be someone.
Oh my God,
who can kind
that
of hustle
was
on,
Donald Glover.
yeah.
I always felt like
mathematician.
when I watch him on the TV, I feel like he had to have been classically trained, or maybe he just is really good. But I just have that actor feeling from him.
Why
it's a nature versus nurture argument.
Oh my God.
Apparently he started out working for 30 Rock. I didn't know that.
Oh yes. Yeah, he's good in that.
Okay.
I forgot he was in Solo, a Star Wars movie also.
Yeah, that's right. He was
How
Lando.
could you forget that?
He was Lando.
Oh my God.
So he's good at taking on a role.
Lando.
He's good at taking on a role that someone else has already been in and made classic, and still doing a good job. So.
Winner.
Yeah, he was really good at that, I think.
So I think he'd be brilliant. Everyone agrees with me, and there's really no dissent at all, I would assume.
Incorrect.
Well, let's hear some.
No,
other
actually,
picks.
no. I completely agree, but I also had another pick, and this was because of a movie I've watched relatively recently called Day Shift with Jamie Foxx and James Franco, and the way they fed off of each other and the way that movie played out, it was perfect. And if you could take that energy and you could take that style and translate it over to Trading Places, I think it'd be a good direction to go.
I'm intrigued. We'll have to watch this.
Yeah, that's been on my list.
And Jamie Franco is a pretty good actor.
I think to stay on Jamie Foxx for a moment, he's been in very dramatic roles. He can do comedy. So I agree. I think he could also do it. I think that he could pass off kind of, do the satire and also kind of take on a more serious role at the end when they're kind of going for it.
Absolutely.
Without giving too much away, because I know you guys haven't seen it yet, but on Day Shift, the chemistry between those two characters is very similar. Like, they don't know each other. They just met. Jamie Foxx is very dry humor, matter of fact, daytime vampire assassin.
What?
Right? And
So
then
it's a true story.
obviously, yes. And then James Franco is like very by the book, very, how do I describe him?
You mean Dave Franco, correct?
Because James Franco is the
Oh,
one.
you're talking about his brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Franco, his younger brother.
Yeah, looks a lot like him.
They do look very similar.
You are absolutely right.
I thought James Franco had been canceled, but
Yes, I think he had been. Dave Franco was in the movie Warm Bodies. That's where I've seen him in.
Yes. Okay. One
but
of
he's
those
a very
Now
good
you see
actor.
me.
He is a very good actor.
One of those Franco guys.
Yeah.
The one that's not canceled. Let's go with that guy.
If you
Just
can't
throw him
get
on the
him,
list.
He's
get his
married to
brother.
Allison Brie. Oh my God.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. We're
Ugh.
getting all the Community references in this episode.
We are.
So, correcting that, Dave Franco, the chemistry between him and Jamie Foxx in Day Shift was fantastic. And it had that same kind of, Jamie Foxx was well aware of everything that was going on, was in the know. Dave Franco was blindsided by it, and now they're just coping and trying to figure a way out of it. And if you distill it down to that, I think that chemistry that they had over in Day Shift could literally be picked up and dropped into a Trading Places remake.
Interesting. You forgot to lead with the most important part, that Snoop Dogg is also in this film. So
I'm trying not to spoil it. Oh my God, Snoop Dogg was absolutely excellent in that film as well. By the way,
well, I'll have to give it a watch.
Yes, it's
okay.
a good one.
Yeah, listen. Jamie Foxx is a great pick. I do think Dave Franco is a decent actor as well. Not in that Now You See Me film, which was terrible, and everyone knows it's terrible, and no one would ever like it.
I liked it.
No, it was lame. I hated it.
How do they do all the magic? It doesn't make sense. Are they actual magicians? That's the only answer. Anyways, let's not let's not go down that road.
Like The Secret, it was a good movie.
All right, so that's Billy Ray. For Lewis Winthorpe III.
So I struggled with this, and I picked, oh God, I'm going to regret this. So I picked one of two people. I couldn't decide, either Cillian Murphy or Noah Reid. And Noah Reid played, God, what's his name from Schitt's Creek? Oh gosh, what's the name of the character?
Amy, you should know.
Help me out here. I've seen Schitt's Creek so many times and I love it.
Oh, I love that actor. All right.
Yeah.
He was in that movie that we watched, the not Outlander. He was the brother.
Oh, he's in a show called Outer Range.
Outer Range, thank you.
Oh,
Played a great
God.
dynamic role. I would never expect him
he's the
to
guy
do
who keeps
that.
singing.
He was crazy. Completely opposite of this. So he's a good actor.
Yeah.
Patrick. Oh my God, I can't
Yes,
believe I
he was
forgot
Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just keep thinking of like the range of things he had to do in Schitt's Creek. So he went from, playing the MC in Cabaret, which, oh God, I would love to see a Schitt's Creek cast version of Cabaret, but that's a different story for a different day. Anyway, he was great at that. And like Schitt's Creek is like, it's comedy, but it's also serious, so he can do both.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen him in anything else, but he's fantastic.
Can he pull off though being not like appealing?
Well, I
he
mean,
has to seem almost like a jerk. And I don't look at him and see
I think he could definitely do it.
You think he could pull off being?
I mean,
in Outer Range, he's an oblivious, like, man-child.
But he was also a little. He seemed a little crazy, not pompous.
I mean, in the first
Either
couple of
way, he
episodes
might.
in Schitt's Creek where he's introduced, it's like he does seem kind of like a dick. Like he's very
Mhm.
pompous, and it's just like, well, maybe
big
you should
shot
come
lawyer guy.
back when you know what your business is.
I'm big shot lawyer guy, and get your shit together.
But it was either him or Cillian Murphy.
I don't see Cillian Murphy
I
in
don't
this role. I don't think he
either.
has the comedy chops.
What about Peaky Blinders? Isn't that a comedy?
No,
No?
not even a little bit.
Oh, I thought it
Nope.
was.
Nope,
Shit.
that is
He's-
a 1930s gang warfare gangster
Oh.
show.
I wonder if he's even been in a comedy before. But
I
he's a
feel like
great
he
actor.
has.
He's a great actor, though.
I mean, he may have been in one, but he's not the funny person.
He's been around for a very long time.
No, look at this guy's filmography. There's no way he can pull off the comedy.
I'm sorry. I guess my
that's
research
not
wasn't
really.
as thorough on that.
No, you're good. You know what? I will say, so before I get into my pick, I think you actually beat us here. I picked someone very specific because of Donald Glover being in the cast, but Noah Reed I think is actually a
Yeah.
fantastic pick, and he could pull it off and be great. And I think him and Donald Glover are two people where you can't quite figure out whether they're how old or young they are.
Exactly.
They both seemed like they both feel like they've been in their 30 somethings for like the past decade. You know what I mean? So it's perfect. But I picked, or Amy came up with this one really, but as soon as you said it, I was like, it's
we'll
perfect.
tag team it.
Yeah.
We'll go in together.
This is Joel McHale, also of Community fame, and possibly other things, but I don't care. He's just from Community. And the reason I want Joel McHale in this is because we've seen him riff with Donald Glover so well, and Joel McHale he always plays the kind of douchey guy. He has a comedy skills. I don't know if he has the range to pull off maybe the more emotional thing, but maybe he's just never been given the chance, because I've never seen him in anything where he just doesn't play kind of a jerk, right?
Yeah.
But in a
He's
funny way.
51.
No
Is he
way.
really?
Yeah. Donald Glover is 39.
I believe that.
I can't
I believe
at
that.
all. I'm broken now. I still see him from
You
as like
need a
the
moment.
college student in Community. So I'm just
You need a
like,
moment.
no, I'll be fine.
It's like when they put all their kids that were in high school, but they're in their 20s. That's what Community was. They put them all in there, but they were way older.
Wow, I did not know he was 51.
That's the thing. When I was
Well-
looking for who to cast as Winthrop, like there were so many good actors to pick, but they have to be relatively younger.
Relatively.
Well, they don't have
Relatively.
to
But if they'll
be.
look younger, excuse me,
Yeah.
look younger.
Like Joel McHale is 51, could pull off a 29-year-old.
Is he one of those actors that like never ages, like Paul Rudd?
I mean, I would have pegged him to be in his like going into his 40s. You know what I mean? Because you know what it is? He's had like that widow's peak for his entire life. And when you've had a widow's peak since you're 21,
Yep.
when you're 50, all of a sudden it's like, well, you've always looked like that, so you're not
Yep.
old now.
I just
Mhm.
covered up his forehead to see if that changes anything, and it does.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Absolutely.
I got to test this theory out myself. It kind of does.
Yeah, it works.
Having a
It's
widow's
funny.
peak is not great, guys. I attest to the fact that it's not fun.
I mean, it's fine. He's
No,
he's
it's
a good listen, look at this 50-year-old
Look at
dude.
that face.
I mean, good for him, you know? All right. Anyways, let's move on.
You.
I think if I had to pick one person out of the people we've said, including Dave Franco from Nick's suggestion, I feel like Noah Reed is like Donald Glover in that they're perfect at the comedy and they could definitely pull off the emotional aspects that I would want in a film like this. So I feel like if I were to pick two, I would go with those two.
Woot, woot.
I kind of want to see a Noah Reed and Donald Glover mix.
I would.
Yeah.
Like I kind of want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be good. It would be good. All right, so kind of moving on then to Ophelia.
When I came up with this actress, my brain just like clung on to it because I was having such a hard time finding her too. Miley Cyrus.
I don't know.
Well, she's Amy's like, I don't like this.
It sounds like you do know, and what you know is that you don't like it.
I don't even think she's acted. Has she ever
Yes.
acted?
Oh, yes.
She was in
What?
Black Mirror. She was married to.
She was
She
in Black
played
Mirror.
Black Mirror as herself.
No, she
Not
was
really.
a singer. She was in oh God, Hannah Montana.
Hannah Montana? That's not acting. Can we skip that out of this podcast? To see her in it and her to do a good job, it would be worth it to me to see if she could play that character.
And the thing is like, the person has to be sharp, but also soft and caring at the same time. And Miley Cyrus does not seem like she cares at all about any level of nakedness she is or is not.
I feel like she might care more now because I feel like she's one of those kids that I kind of feel bad for her because she's not that I sympathize with her over, say, I don't know, starving children, but
I don't feel bad for her.
But what I mean is, like, when you're a child who was always known that kind of stardom life, right? Her dad is a rock star. She was like a kid TV. What's the name of her show? It was like a Disney show, whatever.
Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
Hannah Montana.
So like
yeah.
when you've grown up like that and you're constantly in the starlight, you've seen people like lose it, like, and then when you lose it in a public way, and it's an embarrassing. And I think a lot of us would react the same way if we were put in that position. So I'm on the like, hey, if she wants to, grow up and mature, how old is she like right now? She's 30, you know what I mean? Like maybe I know that when I was turning 30 that I was definitely more mature than I was like when I was like 25 or 22 or something like that. So maybe she's matured and she, I don't, she's not doing crazy stuff. I don't know. I don't actually keep track of what she's doing because I don't care. But but people, even rich celebrities have problems.
She looks like Jamie Lee Curtis too, in some of these pictures I'm seeing, so I can see her visually.
Yeah, with the shorter hair in some of the pictures.
Yeah.
When you originally told me that this was your pick, I immediately flashed to the episode of Black Mirror. Like someone who could play a serious-ish role, and really kind of run
the
with
more
it.
I think about that episode, it was really good.
Yeah,
it was.
It was creepy.
Yeah, it was certainly that. But I think that's all of the Black Mirror episodes.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see it.
Okay.
Maybe it's a stretch, but
it's definitely, it would be one of those things where, like, do you remember when Lady Gaga was going into acting and everyone was like, eh, and then
she blew it out of the park.
Yeah, and then she like won an Oscar or nominated or whatever.
Nominated.
But like,
dude, I forgot about Lady Gaga.
So I guess my pick for Ophelia was going to be Zazie Beetz, who's from Deadpool 2. She plays Domino, the person who gets lucky. She's also from the show Atlanta with Donald Glover. So I'm just doing a whole Donald Glover universe
Donald Glover cinematic universe.
Correct. Yeah, if you've been in a movie with Donald Glover, then I will cast you in my film.
But wait, my pick is in the same aspect too. I choose Alison Brie.
Oh my God.
And was she in Community? Yes, she was. Is she a great actress? She was in Glow. Yes, she was.
What does Joel McHale's character say? We try not to sexualize Annie because she's so young.
She's pretty young.
But she's been in, and I'm trying to think of a more serious role, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but I know she's been in both serious and comedic, and she's got the face and the body, and I think
she was Will Ferrell's girlfriend / wife in Get Hard.
Oh, really? I don't even remember that.
Yeah. And then I personally haven't seen it, but I pulled up her IMDb here, and it looks like a potential serious role is in Sleeping with Other People from a few years ago. But again, I haven't seen that one, so I can't really pass judgment on her.
I saw Horse Girl. She was extremely good in that, playing a really crazy person.
Hold up,
in what
Amy.
movie?
Hold up.
Horse Girl. Look it up. It came out in 2020.
Okay.
Amy,
What?
we forgot she was in Mad Men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
She was also in Promising Young Woman.
Which was what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
Very
great
good movie.
Yeah. One of my favorite revenge movies in a long while.
Yeah.
If you like revenge films, you should check out Promising Young Woman because it's very subversive in a way in how the revenge is gotten. I really like it. Anyways, Alison Brie is a good pick also. I agree with that. And also was in a film with Donald Glover, so check, that's allowed. And is married to Dave Franco, who was Nick's pick. So
Check.
we're really covering all the bases here.
Yeah.
What is it called?
1 degree of separation.
Six degrees of Kevin Bacon.
It's 6 degrees of Donald Glover.
Donald Glover.
Guys,
love it.
Guys, we're all 6 degrees away from Kevin Bacon.
Always.
Yep.
Cool.
Always.
Kevin Bacon is my uncle, so I'm 1 degree from Kevin Bacon. That's a true story. Sorry. I shook for the audience. I shook my head, and I realized no one listening could have.
So I was laughing so hard. I'm like, no one can hear that.
Just
rattle.
deadpanned it, and it was fantastic.
I did The Office. I looked at the camera, just shook my head like you would all see it. All right, so let's kind of move on to Coleman, who is one of those characters in the film whose name you might not know, but he's the butler. Played by, I believe,
Denholm Elliott.
Great actor.
From Indiana Jones for most of us, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I picked Michael Sheen for this. Again, another one that I was a little shaky on. I've seen him in a couple things, and I don't have any justification for this. It just felt right.
That's okay.
Hey, there you go.
It just felt right. That's
He's
Mr. I'm sticking to it.
If he can play it, then why not?
I didn't pick anyone else for it because I think it's a great pick. He can play the comedic role. He could definitely play a butler. It's pretty offensive that you just picked someone for their accent, which is what I assume you did.
No,
but
get out of here.
No, he's one of those actors that's been in every time he's in something. It kind
He's
of
fantastic.
And it elevates. If I see his name, I'm much more likely to be like, oh, I'll just give this a chance. Even if it looks okay.
I don't see what's wrong with picking someone that has a butler accent.
A butler accent? Is that what we're calling it now? Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's a butler accent?
So apparently it's an accent.
Hip and cheerio and
yeah.
Across the pond?
It's an across the pond accent.
Good afternoon,
Pat is extremely.
sir.
Pat, can you even do an accent from across the pond?
Listen.
And you actually are.
Have you wiped it from your vernacular?
Correct. I moved to America the same year that the first Austin Powers film came out, so I worked very hard to get rid of my accent very quickly because I was mocked quite badly.
Slow tear.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good pick for Coleman. And I guess kind of the last really 2 people in the film that are worth picking are the Duke brothers.
I mean, not worth picking. You have to pick them. Like
I had problems.
I don't know.
Me too.
I'd love to leave the original too, but that's just not a thing.
Well, they're probably dead now.
They're absolutely dead. They died before we were born.
Yeah. Like, let's see, Ralph Bellamy.
Oh,
I know that the director, John
Landis,
when he hired both of these actors, he was in love with them. Absolutely every single movie they were in. He chose them specifically for that.
He died in 91.
Oh, yeah. It was a while ago.
Don Ameshi. He died in 1993. Oh my God. So I picked Gary Oldman and Dick Van Dyke. And I know like my very first pick was, I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I was just like, nah, that's not right. My very first pick were Anthony Hopkins and Michael Caine. And like, it's not, it doesn't,
that.
It's not correct, but I would pay money to see it.
I'd love that, especially with, no. I'd love that. Both your pick.
But Gary Oldman would be Mortimer because Mortimer seems like the younger, more spry of the two, and Dick Van Dyke would be Randolph. And they've both done comedies. They've both done serious roles. I think it would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
I agree. I think Gary Oldman is a great pick. He was in a film, and when I saw his name, I looked it up. It's called The Laundromat, and it is about the Panama Papers. That essentially a bunch of people hoarding their money in tax havens, essentially, and Gary Oldman and Antonio Banderas play essentially their
wow.
lawyers, and they break the fourth wall. They talk to the audience a lot,
Nice.
and yeah, so Gary Oldman plays this kind of corrupt kind of lawyer, and like literally is talking to the audience. And I actually getting on to like what we would change. I mean, you could have them break the fourth wall. I feel like that's as an option.
There is that fourth wall break that happens in this film too. Like something happens, like the Duke brothers are telling Billy Ray something, and he just gives the camera this look like,
yeah,
you seeing this shit?
Yeah.
It's just so great. Like, it's just a look. And I don't remember it being that funny, but it so is. No, Gary Oldman is great in everything he's in. You could put him on stage with a bunch of 2-year-olds singing the ABCs and it would still be amazing.
I agree. And I'm just looking up Dick Van Dyke.
He's still alive as far as I'm aware.
Yes, because you know I'm a stickler about people being alive. And I was like, there's no way this dude's alive.
No, he is.
96 years old.
Look at him go.
Good for him.
Oh, he doesn't look very strong though. He'd have to be a lot of sitting down scenes.
I mean, that's mostly what he does.
They even sit down in the elevator.
Yeah, they sit down in the damn elevator.
That's true.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
This role is made for him.
Yeah, that's funny.
Wow, he is very, very old.
Yes. Yeah. All right, those are some good picks. Notably, Gary Oldman, Dick Van Dyke, not related to Donald Glover in any way. So unfortunate, but necessary, I think.
Well, what about mine for Mortimer? I was going to do Chevy Chase.
Oh.
I think Donald Glover hates Chevy Chase, though.
I think everybody hates Chevy Chase.
That's true.
All right, so let's kind of move on then to the final part. What would we change? What changes would we make to the film? Andrea, do you want to kind of start us with kind of like any changes you'd want to make?
Yeah, so so I'm sure that day trading still takes place on the floor of the actual, like, in New York in person. But for the most part it takes place online. Like your broker submits an order on the computer. That's how it works. And it's not like, they're not going to, I would think that people for the most part are not, going to the floor of the, World Trade Center and making trades. The building, well, I mean, one of the scenes in the movie that always just like gets me, like kind of hits hard, is when they walk up to the World Trade Center and they're just looking up at it and they're like, oh my God. And it's like, movie took place in 1982, and it's just like one of those moments, as someone who knows exactly where they were on 9/11. But Pat, I know you're gonna edit out a lot of these uhs and ums, so thank you in advance.
I'm gonna leave them in now.
No. So I feel like that in order to have the emotional payoff that you need, you still have to have some kind of in-person exchange, I think. So I would want to update it in a way that still allowed for some kind of in-person meetup, even though a lot of financial transactions happen, on the phone or online now. And there's a lot of recent financial happenings that could definitely be outlined in this movie. It doesn't have to be, trading like the way this movie depicted. There's a lot of shady financial stuff that's happened that could easily be talked about, like Enron, Theranos, where that woman Elizabeth, insert last name here.
Just got a whole bunch of years for
11 and a half, I think, for stealing money, or not stealing money, but like taking money from people and telling them misrepresenting a product, and also
defrauding investors.
Defrauding investors, and then more recently Sam Bankman-Fried with his crypto company just taking an absolute dump
on purpose, because he basically should have set it up as a shell company
on purpose. Yep. Fun fact: there is a Behind the Bastards episode on him too. It just came out.
You could actually make floor trading still work. The New York Stock Exchange actually still has floor trades for specific types of trading, and especially since we panned from gold to silver to frozen orange juice concentrate. We could literally plug in any name of floor traded commodity.
I did research on that. Like as I was looking up, like about the making of the film and whatnot.
Yeah.
They picked frozen concentrate orange juice because it was a random thing that Americans did not know was actually traded on the stock market, or that something that people just wouldn't know. It was like, yeah, we know gold and silver, but they probably don't know pork belly, and they probably don't know orange juice.
Right.
Yeah, and to kind of circle back to what the climax of the movie is going to be, because that whole stock trading scene, it could happen, but the train scene can't happen. Like no one's, putting papers in a briefcase and moving them on a train.
You'd have to have like a thumb drive or something.
Yeah, but like
even then that's still a stretch.
If you look at what The Big Short did for financial crisis and kind of making that entertaining, that's brilliant. The other thing I'd recommend watching is Succession, which is a family drama, but also deals with a stand-in for like the people who own Fox News, or insert another big news corporation here, but I believe they're focused on the Murdochs as kind of their kind of stand-ins. There's a lot of standing around and talking in that film, and it works on so many levels. It's never boring. So you can have almost like action scenes, even though what's happening is happening digitally, right? In The Big Short, you kind of get to see the stock market crash unfold kind of in front of you with all these actors, that were invested in one way or the other at different levels, how they're reacting to it, what their actions are, and that type of thing. So you can have, instead of going to the trading floor, have a bunch of quick fire like meetings, and then could do something like, for those who don't know, if you've ever been to the subreddit Wall Street Bets, first of all, never take any advice from any of those people. I don't care if one of them became a millionaire, the rest didn't. Don't take any of their advice ever. But it is hilarious to watch the trolls work. And I would love to see the end game con involve like hey, let's get a bunch of people on Reddit, because what the Wall Street people did with the GameStop stock is everyone was super leveraged on being short, so they were able to force the buyers to cover their potential losses, and that's why the stock went up to like $200, because everyone who was short on it had to end up buying. Essentially, this is not exactly what happened, but essentially had to cover their short positions, aka buy the stock. And so there was kind of this run on the shorts, and it was because a bunch of stocks are over leveraged, even though they really shouldn't be. Like there should be limits on you can't short more stocks than the number of stocks that exist.
Yeah.
But that happens sometimes. So there's all these like irregularities in banking. That's just one of them that the Wall Street people took advantage of, and some of them got very rich. And then a lot of them said they were going to hold forever like a bunch of idiots and lost their money.
So thematically, what you're saying is manipulate an online forum, in this case, Wall Street Bets on Reddit, into doing your dirty work for you. And you use that avalanche of leveraged social capital in an online platform to then give you the same outcome as the original movie.
Yes, and the theme works, right? You can combine the Wall Street Bets with like an Enron, where it's kind of like it collapses once people realize what's going on and the kind of pyramid of cards comes down.
Or how like Robinhood stopped trades.
Exactly. And you could have it because the retail investors often get screwed, and you could have it kind of be almost that kind of, like you say, like literally the Robin Hoods of the world. They're stealing from the rich, and they've always been the underdogs, and all of a sudden now they're on top. That would be very cathartic, and it would also be very symbolic of the times we live in.
It also fits nicely with the movie.
Yeah, thematically,
yes.
it fits right.
Thematically, it fits with the movie.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that idea. All right, Pat, it's greenlit. Go do it.
I just have to call my personal friend Donald Glover and see if he can get all his friends to.
Nice. Well done.
With one other thing about what I'd like to maybe not change, but nowadays I feel like the gap between the haves and the have-nots are a little bit bigger. And I think that if you were to do this movie now, you'd have to be more obvious with that disparity.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's actually one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about, so we can kind of segue and kind of have both our points at the same time. One of the things that I wanted more of was I forgot how much of the film is kind of building up until Dan Aykroyd dresses as Santa Claus. Almost every part of this film is just like one long build up. And I wanted a little more of that build up to be, let's look at the way Eddie Murphy lives. Let's look at the way not Dan Aykroyd lives, because you see enough of that, but let's look at the way Dan Aykroyd has to come to terms with who he is, because Dan Aykroyd kind of doesn't learn any lessons in this movie. He gets kicked out on the street, and I know he does try and kill himself, but that's like literally a piece of humor. The first person he runs into, basically, that isn't one of his rich friends is nice to him, drives him around town, and then just lets him stay at her house the first day she meets him. And I kind of want more comeuppance for Dan Aykroyd's character to kind of learn something. And I want Ophelia to actually teach him something important, and that is that when you're poor, or middle class a lot of the times, but especially when you're poor, the cost of doing something nice is real.
Yeah.
Whether it's money, whether it's your time, whether it's your effort, your stress, when you have a lot going on, when you've got the bills are due, right, and someone needs to borrow, a friend of yours needs to borrow $20, or one of your family members got into a car accident, needs rides, or like, that is stressful. Like, if one of my friends got into a car accident and I was busy, I would literally just call him an Uber. You know what I mean? But like, if you don't have lots of money, you can't call someone an Uber because they're expensive these days. And so I want Ophelia to do something that actually hurts her and has an impact on her life, to make Dan Aykroyd's character realize that, like, oh, I could have been doing so much more for people, and I've taken that for granted. And there's all these people living around me that don't have enough, but are still out there doing the right thing. You know what I mean? I want that to be more of his motivation, because at the end of the movie, he's just still rich, and the only thing that's happened is Eddie Murphy is also rich. Like, nothing else changes. The end of the movie is them on an island. You know what I mean? Doing well, Billy Ray, doing well.
I think they did try to do that, but I think it fell flat. Because there is a moment where Ophelia comes in with a bunch of groceries, and Louis helps bring them in and like set it on the kitchen table, and she's like, "Listen, man, groceries cost money.
Money doesn't grow on trees," or whatever she says.
Yeah, and she's like, I have to work for this money. I have appointments I need to keep. I've got, and like, it just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't click with him. So yeah, I'd like to see that get developed into something that was a little bit more meaningful, and not just a 30-second waste of screen time.
I feel like there was something just hit me right now. I feel like that might come from the perspective of the film. So so let me ask this question. Whose film do you think this is? Like, whose story are we telling? Are we telling the Duke brothers story, or are we telling Winthorpe's story, or is it Billy Ray? Maybe we don't see any sort of character arc or any sort of lesson learned, because we're seeing it from the perspective of the Dukes. Like, that's the lens that we're looking at it from.
We wouldn't see the Billy Ray and Winthorpe sitting on a beach at the end if it were from the perspective of the Dukes.
Maybe not their perspective of, but it's
I think
their story kind of thing.
I think what they set the plot in motion, essentially, but I think the biggest screen time mostly goes to Dan Aykroyd, because he has the love interest of the film, right? And like, Eddie Murphy's sidekick / love interest is the butler, right? Like, it's those two pair off for most of the movie, and then the four of them come together. Eddie Murphy's with a beautiful woman at the end of the film. We have no idea who she is. He's just with a beautiful woman now and on a beach. Like, you know what I mean? So like, whereas Dan Aykroyd's story has a payoff in regards to, like, he gets the girl in that traditional movie sense, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So if I had to pick someone, this is Dan Aykroyd's movie. But again, I think going back to that, I think if you take a little more time to set up Eddie Murphy's character, maybe, in the original film, he's a Vietnam veteran, he's homeless. Maybe don't make him homeless, maybe make him a family man, but he's struggling to get by, he's all behind on his bills, you know what I mean? So, and he gets caught up in...
He's not a Vietnam.
He's not a Vietnam
veteran.
veteran.
Oh, he's faking. He's faking.
He's faking everything.
Yeah. But make him more of a sympathetic. He can still be like a street, a street hustler, a grifter, but like maybe make him more of a sympathetic character from the start, where like he has a family, maybe he has kids, he's struggling to make ends meet, maybe he's just lost his job in a layoff at like a factory or something, and the bills are due, and now he's
I think putting too much emphasis on the character,
it would make less of a comedy.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm hearing you guys talk, drama. And I'm completely losing interest because I wanted a remake of a comedy, and now you guys are trying to.
Yeah, but,
I feel like putting that much, like I feel like putting that much back. Like I get that, I feel like that Winthorpe would like it would be cool if he learned some kind of lesson, but I think like adding more than that and kind of putting more onto like Eddie Murphy's character, like that's making it more of like a drama and less of a comedy or a satire, I think.
I agree and disagree at the same time. I think if we beefed up Ophelia's character, like Pat said, to add some real world consequences to Louis' actions and what he's doing, and how the real world works, and why it's important that, or why he can't just walk out onto the street and swipe a credit card to swipe away all of his problems. I think that could add some depth to the movie that didn't exist. But I would also say that you can't really change too much on the Billy Ray side of it, because you do need some of that the existing storyline to shine through for it to stay true to its roots.
That's fair.
And he would have never gone with the Duke brothers if he had like a wife and kids and blah blah blah.
I think he works as a grifter because he's completely on his own.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is like you could make him, because he's not really sympathetic, Eddie Murphy, at all. I know he's poor, but, he's like pretending to be a Vietnam veteran is terrible. I mean, it happens nowadays too. You get people pretending, walking around wearing uniforms they got out of a Goodwill or something, pretending like they're veterans or something, and it's really disrespectful to people who actually serve their country, and in many cases, like over the past couple decades, like put their life on the line. And I guess that's fine being part of his character, but like I would like to see him be more sympathetic, because you kind of forget the type of person he is once he's in at the Duke brothers, like, you know what I mean, like he's only becomes sympathetic again when the Duke brothers basically call him the N-word, essentially.
I don't know, Pat. I think you need to leave that exactly how it is. Like you can't have that tie back for Eddie Murphy's character, because it brings it back to the Duke brothers' point of nature versus nurture. Like if he was in that role and he was like, oh, I've got to remember where I came from and this and that, like it changes that entire dynamic. Whereas it gives a little bit of credence to the experiment that the Duke brothers are doing, in the fact that he became a ruthless trader, the floor trader, for the stock exchange, and was able to just drop into the role so effectively. It plays with that whole idea that you can just pull someone from the street, drop them into the role, and train them and get them into that space.
But it wasn't without a bit of a journey too, like Winthorpe and Ophelia having that moment where she's like, this costs money, I have to keep my appointments. He has people from the bar over to his house, and like they put out the cigarettes on the rug, and they basically trash his house, and he's just essentially like realizes that these people don't care about him, they're not his friends, and he kicks them all out.
He's also then possessive of what he now has, right? The same way that a lot of people who get wealthy tend to end up being.
Yeah.
Right. He realizes that money purchased those friends, not those friends actually like wanting to be around him for him.
So what I'm hearing here is we already have that experience in Billy Ray's character development, and the way that the movie was already written is already probably the best way to do that for Billy Ray's story arc.
I'm okay with Billy Ray not changing. I definitely want Dan Aykroyd's character, Winthorpe, to kind of have a more come to Jesus moment before he
eats the fish.
No, the eating of the fish is fine. Like he's at his bottom.
No, I love that character.
He's at his bottom there, but he doesn't at the end. He doesn't particularly sacrifice.
Yeah, he learned
anything,
nothing.
right? Yeah. So exactly. Yeah, there's almost no lesson learned, right? He took his friend's money and then made a bunch of money with it.
Right.
He seemed to not care very much that his fiance was just gone after one scene. I remember thinking in my head, like, oh, his fiance is with some other man. He's just upset, but that's it.
I think that speaks to the depth of relationships for power.
All right, so we've chatted about what changes we'd make. So final verdict time. Would we remake this film? Nick, let's start with you.
Absolutely. I found out that you are 1 degree of separation from Donald Glover, and I need to meet that dude.
All right, Amy?
Honestly, I like the original. I feel like it's one of those classic movies that it was nice to see if people now could play the actors, but I wouldn't remake it. I keep it as is.
All right, and for me, it would be a yes. I think the film still has something to say, and that's always a good potential for a remake. And Andrea, you picked this film. Final verdict.
Well, I think it's girls against guys on this one, because I do agree with Amy, and I don't think it should be remade. It was a fun thought experiment to talk about it and to see what we could do and what might be fun. But it's a classic. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't think that this should be messed with.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you have it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Original Remake Podcast. If you'd like to provide feedback or have a question, please email us at remake.cast@gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.